Cheryl Johnson is a corporate recruiter in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She's also known to be a loving mother of her 10-year-old daughter, Cammie. Cheryl, being separated from her husband but is still on good communication terms with him, has been working super hard on ensuring her daughter is able to pursue her passions in gymnastics. Now, with the day being Thursday, Cheryl's day is quite predictable. She gets up in the morning when her alarm clock goes off. She makes sure that Cammie is fed and can go to school on time. Now, while Cammie is attending her school, Cheryl goes to her corporate job. And after school, Cammie would directly attend her gymnastics class where Cheryl would settle in for the evening. And that's essentially how this Thursday evening went. After a long day of work, Cheryl sat down on her couch, and then her cell phone started to ring. She looked down, and it was not a number she recognized. Yet, this was something not uncommon. Cheryl worked in recruiting. She often would receive random phone calls outside of her working hours. So, Cheryl decided to answer her phone. Her hands trembled as the voice on the other side of the phone said, "I'm only going to ask you one time. Are you interested in helping out your daughter and saving her life?" The color in Cheryl's face drained because her only focus right now is ensuring her daughter Cammie is safe. Before she can even respond, Cheryl heard her daughter scream on the other side of the call. Her worst fear came true. Her daughter was kidnapped. Hi, and welcome Cyber Defenders back to the CyberSpeak Labs. My name is Reanna Schultz, and I'll be your aide today as I guide you through different learning opportunities here in CyberSpeak Labs. Now, today's episode, it's going to be over a very intense subject called cyber kidnapping, also known historically as virtual kidnapping. And I had recently come across this topic when I started doing my true crime binge, and a story stuck out to me. And it was one that I've heard before, but I decided to dive down the internet rabbit hole and really started doing my own research and came to the conclusion this would be a really good podcast episode for you guys. So, with this being said, CyberSpeak Labs is happy to promote the nonprofit, the Cyber Helpline. This nonprofit provides free public resources for those who have fallen victim to cybercrime or need education on how to report these crimes. You can find more information about their initiatives by visiting https://thecyberhelpline.com. I've also included the link for this nonprofit in the description of the podcast. Now, as a quick disclaimer, before we dive into this research, I will say some of the identities of the victims have been redacted from this episode, and that's just to provide privacy for the victim. And there will be some sensitive topics that can also be very mentally stressful for some of our audience members. This episode will be going over topics that could cause paranoia, including stress-related anxiety symptoms, and then for those who might suffer PTSD from very stressful upbringings. So some of the topics will include kidnapping, self-harm, human trafficking, substance abuse, assault, and other related. So with this being said, user discretion is advised. But if any of these disclaimers are triggering to you, absolutely no worries. We'll see you again in the lab soon, and you should check out some of our previous episodes. We always enjoy our listeners to rate and subscribe to the podcast. So, without further ado, let's put on our white coats and enter the lab to learn. Cyber kidnapping or virtual kidnapping has been around for some time. In the United States from 2013 to 2015, law enforcement in Los Angeles started to receive a rise of reports. And these reports were coming from friends and family members claiming that they know someone very close, like a relative or their own child, that was being kidnapped and they were transported to Mexico. Now, one or two of these claims, sure, Los Angeles is a very large area with a lot of people living in it. But when you start seeing the numbers rise into double digits, people are now going to start asking questions. And eventually, because of this high rise of reports, the FBI had got involved at this point. And they realized that there was a pattern. The callers were targeting Spanish speaking victims. These were the people coming forward to report of their missing loved ones. And eventually, the scope got more wider. It was basically whoever would pick up the phone at this point. And the scammers would demand ransom to those that they were calling, and they were demanding money. They needed it now. Otherwise, whoever they kidnapped is going to be harmed in Mexico and be sold. And in fact, the FBI had stated that over 87,000 US dollars were sent to these scammers. However, when the FBI conducted their investigation, nobody was kidnapped, nobody was tortured, and in fact, there wasn't anyone being sent to Mexico. So the FBI started releasing public advisories about these scams and the sophistication and psychological terror that was introduced to the public. The FBI warned people this is what you call cyber or virtual kidnapping. Essentially, nobody is physically kidnapped, but the victims believe someone is through fake sounds, photos, or other manipulation tactics. And that's exactly what happened to Cheryl Johnson. After a long day of work on Thursday, Cheryl assumed her 10-year-old daughter, Cammie, was at her gymnastics practice. That was until she settled in and she received a call from an unknown number. Cheryl works in corporate recruiting. So, like I said before, having an unknown number call her, this is nothing unusual for Cheryl. Answering the call, she was greeted with this.
We have your daughter in our van. We kidnapped her. This is about a kidnapping, okay?
Now, if you can't understand the recording, the caller prompted Cheryl with the following. We have your daughter in our van. Stunned by this, she assumed Cammie was at gymnastics practice, and she asked the caller, who is this? Who is this? And the response was more aggressive.
I'm only going to ask you one time. Are you in for attention? Do you think it's necessary for me to cut off one of her body parts?
And this is just a summary of what the conversation was like. Eventually, the conversation had escalated even more. The caller demanded Cheryl to get in her car and drive. Did that if she did not, absolutely not do anything that is being told to her, he will personally ensure her daughter will never be seen again. This terrified Cheryl. The only thing she could think about was her daughter's safety, wanting her home, making sure she's okay and not scared. And to make sure the caller knew she was in her car, because the caller demanded her to get in her car and drive, Cheryl honked her car horn twice. And frantically driving, Cheryl states during this time that she was frantically driving that in hopes she would get pulled over by the police or someone would flag her down with her terrible driving, but nobody does. No police officer, nothing. And while on the phone, the caller then demands, how much money can you get me in 30 minutes? How much money? And Cheryl goes, I don't know. And the caller said if she gave him money, he will let her daughter go. And Cheryl goes, okay, yep, I'm listening. Yep, I can get you money. And then the caller asked where she was. Cheryl provided the area she lived in. And then the caller gave her directions to the nearest ATM. Cheryl withdrew $134 and the caller had given her directions to a near bank where she had wired the money to an account in Mexico. Now, during this time, Cheryl was very intelligent and she was able to message her ex-husband and ask, "Where is Cammie? Have you heard from Cammie? I think she's kidnapped." So her husband says, just hold tight, hold tight. I'm gonna go to Cammie's gymnastics practice, gather information, and then we can start a police report from there. We need to see if someone saw something, if we can give any tips to the police, because we can't give them information based off of someone has her kidnapped. And so Cheryl, being completely distracted by this caller, she tells him, "Hey, I transferred the money. Can you let my daughter go? You have money." And the caller said this: "No, I need more money. I need you to go to a different ATM. I need you to go to an ATM, get me more money, or I'm gonna hurt your daughter. You will never see your daughter again. Get me more money." Cheryl, frantic, got back in her car. She turned it on, and then her phone buzzed. It was a text message from her ex-husband, and it said, "Hey, Cammie's at her gymnastics practice." And Cheryl was full of relief. And in fact, she just realized Cammie was never kidnapped. Cammie was never in harm. And she realized that this was all a scam. And as she's coming through this realization, the scammer on the other side of the phone goes, "Are you there? I need money. I'm gonna hurt her. You don't understand the abilities that I have and what I can do." And then click. Cheryl hangs up the phone and took a big sigh of relief and went to go see her daughter at gymnastics and gave her one of the biggest hugs ever. And of course, Cammie has no idea as to anything that happened that day. But what Cheryl did is she told her story to news outlets. In fact, Timeline did do a quick interview with Cheryl and Cammie, and they talked about, hey, this is 8-10 years later since this incident. What happened since then? And this moment had completely changed their lives. Cheryl started to warn other families about the dangers of cyber kidnapping, how to spot scammers, how to really ensure to have safe passwords with your loved ones, how to never fall for these extortion techniques. And the sad part is, from Cheryl and Cammie's story, the scammer was never found. Cheryl will never forget what happened that day. After a long week of dealing with deadlines, meetings, and also running my dog Child to daycare and all of his fun activities that he's in, I sometimes just want to come home and escape and be transported to a different cinematic universe. I know for me, one of my favorite pastimes is visiting my local AMC movie theater. And let's be real, the taste of movie theater popcorn is one of the best nostalgic taste of any type of snack ever. And buying that popcorn at your local store just really isn't the same as going to the actual movie theater and getting it fresh out of the machine. And because you all are listeners of Defenders and Lab Codes, I can share this awesome news with you all. I too can help you all be transported to the different cinematic universe without breaking your bank. CyberSpeak Labs is offering up to 50% on AMC movie tickets through our Linktree sponsorship. This deal is a limited time offer, so make sure you purchase it before it's too late. You can find our discount link in the description of the podcast. Discounts may vary depending on the state the theater is located. Please make sure you read instructions carefully on AMC's website. And enjoy the popcorn. After listening to Cheryl's story, it honestly feels like the beginning of a true crime story. These scammer groups are not your normal groups. They are sophisticated. They take their time studying their victims through social media and general online usage. And most of the time, victims don't realize how public a lot of their personal information or social media posts are. I always tell people, Google your first and last name and the city you reside in, and just see what populates. In fact, you should go to a AI search engine like ChatGPT or Copilot and do the exact same thing. It is crazy how easily you can find people, their families, their living history, where they work, their court records. That's always fun to find. And that's exactly how a scammer discovered Kai Zhuang. Kai was born and raised in China. He had a very close and very positive relationship with his family, especially with his parents. And to pursue diverse education, Kai took the opportunity to study abroad as a foreign exchange student. In 2023, Kai, who was 17 years old at the time, got transferred to attend high school in the Wepper School District in Utah. His host family that he'll be staying in resides in a smaller town in Utah called Riverdale. And it's the type of town that is small but has that really strong community feeling. As in, everyone knows everyone and their kids, and they probably grew up with each other in generations. And in fact, the town population is roughly around 9,100 during the 2023 census. So again, it's a very close community. And Riverdale is also very close to a lot of nature amenities as well. And this includes things such as canyons, mountain trails, rivers. But in the winter, these nature locations drastically change terrain due to cold climates. In December to January, it's not uncommon the Riverdale area will have temperatures to be 30 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius, and they would typically receive 40 to 50 inches of snow during this span. Lakes will freeze, and the canyons around the area produce this very cold, chilling wind, and this often leads to the hazy skies when mixed with snowy conditions. So it's basically a winter fog. Now, on December 28th, Riverdale police receive a phone call about a missing foreign exchange student. Because it is December and how Utah is in this area in the winter, it could be very dangerous if this kid is found to be outside. Now, the Riverdale police had received a phone call tipping law enforcement about a teenager named Kai. And what puzzled the police even more is that the high school student Kai, the school he was attending, the school was the one to report Kai missing. Not his host parents, not his friends, nothing. The school that Kai was attending. And the reason that the school reported Kai to be missing was because his parents in China were the ones to report his son missing. In fact, his parents called the school very frantic, going, it's Kai, we need to know if Kai's okay, is Kai there? And the school goes, are you okay, what's going on? And they had stated, we think Kai's been kidnapped. We just want to make sure he's okay, we want to make sure he's okay. And the school goes, what makes you think he's kidnapped? And the parents go, we have photo evidence of him being kidnapped. He is clearly being held hostage. We are being asked for money to make sure our son doesn't get harmed. Please, can someone help us? Is there police over there? And the school goes, can you send the pictures to us? And the parents promptly sent the photos of what appeared to be Kai kidnapped. And this was very alarming because, again, the host parents that Kai was staying with never reported Kai to be missing. And so when the school called law enforcement and even provided the evidence of what Kai's parents had given them of Kai being kidnapped, law enforcement triggered an endangered missing persons investigation. So the following day, on Friday, December 29th, law enforcement has sent an officer to Kai's host family for an interview. Knocking on the door, the host family answers, and the officer asks, hey, have you all seen Kai? Are you aware that Kai has disappeared? Are you aware that we have filed a missing persons report? Do you know if he's in danger? And the host family was very confused by these questions. They had no idea what was going on. They didn't even know Kai was missing. And they had stated the last time they saw Kai was earlier that morning. And in fact, they had even saw him the night before. Neighbors also proceeded with the same information. They didn't know anything of Kai being in danger. They didn't expect Kai to be missing. Kai was a very friendly person to be around. He was very polite. And law enforcement asked neighbors, hey, you all have doorbell camera footage. Are you okay if you share that with us? And of course, all the neighbors, including the host family, collaborated with law enforcement because they need to know where Kai is. And so law enforcement took all of this video, they went back to the station, and they started going through it. Now, since Kai's parents resided in China, the Riverdale police started coordinating their investigation with the FBI U.S. Embassy in China, where they had also started working with Chinese law officials on their side, seeing if someone knew something about Kai's disappearance, if there was someone sent to kidnap Kai. It was very stressful. I could not even imagine the parents or any way of how they're feeling and how scared they are and how they just want their son to be safe. Now, on Saturday, December 30th, so 2 days after Kai has been reported missing, Riverdale police were running into roadblocks on where did Kai go. They know that for a fact he left his house on the 28th, and they know for a fact that he went to a store. And they were eventually able to pull cell phone data and bank records and discovered that Kai went shopping at the store. Nobody picked Kai up. He was browsing the aisles, he was picking stuff, putting them in a cart, and when the police zoomed in on the footage, they realized Kai was shopping for camping supplies. And so the police went back to Kai's host parents. And again, right, being in Utah, there's a lot of nature amenities in the area. And the police asked Kai's host family, hey, is Kai an outdoorsy person? And they said, no, absolutely not. And the police said, so would it be odd if he went hiking or camping? And they said, yeah, absolutely. He is not an outdoorsy person. He wants nothing to do with exploring nature. That's not Kai at all. And the police found this interesting. So what they did after the store, they were able to trace cell data from Kai's phone. And police suspected where he could have went. And it was located about 20 to 40 miles away from Riverdale in a canyon side, or I guess a mountain landscape in Utah, in Brigham City. Now, on Sunday, December 31st, 3 days after the missing investigation launch, police had an idea as to where Kai could be. They had sent drones, helicopters, and started doing a foot search and rescue team. Now, one of the officers leading this rescue effort really thought back on what Kai's parents had to say. Kai is not an outdoorsy type. Kai is not experienced in hiking. He does not really enjoy nature to the point where he's probably not an expert in camping. And so the law enforcement officer and his peer decided to walk up one of the most novice trails on the mountainside. And sure enough, they found a tent. And they called Kai's name. They're like, Kai, we are part of the law enforcement. We're police, Kai. And Kai emerged from his tent. He's in a coat. His face is red from being cold. He was shaking, holding himself together for body warmth, and he looked scared. Police poked their head inside of Kai's tent, and inside was a sleeping bag, a heated blanket, limited food, water, and several cell phones. Odd, the police thought. And so they asked Kai, hey, are you all right? And Kai said, yes. And police said, okay, can you kind of tell us what happened? And Kai said, I just want to speak to my family. I need to know if they're safe, and I want a warm cheeseburger. The man knows what he wants. So, what the police did, they had medical nearby. Medical reviewed Kai. He was not injured. He was not harmed. Nothing terrible happened to Kai, and they cleared him and said he's good to go. The Riverdale police were more than happy to let him talk with his family and eat a very warm cheeseburger. But again, how did parents from China receive photo evidence about their own son being kidnapped and held hostage when that son is completely fine and eating a cheeseburger right in front of the police's face? So, after Kai got settled in, got warmed up, had food inside of him, knew his family was safe, they decided to interview Kai about the situation and ask, what happened to you? Kai said, this wasn't my first time camping. And police kind of leaned over their seat and they asked Kai, what do you mean? And he said, the first time I tried to go camping was on December 20th, 8 days prior to Kai's missing person report. But when he went outside to go walk and attempt to camp, he was picked up by a police officer, mostly because it was probably an odd time and there's just a random 17-year-old teenager that it does not look like a Utah local. I'm sure the police officer goes, what is this? And picked up Kai and returned him back to his host family. And Kai had stated that he was terrified, basically. He was approached online by people impersonating Chinese law enforcement. And this was a month or two up to his disappearance. And the Riverdale law enforcement goes, okay, and what did they say? And Kai said that the Chinese officials, or claiming to be the Chinese officials, had told Kai if he doesn't answer their questions and their demands, they are going to hurt his family in China. And when he comes back to China, they're going to frame everything on him. And he's going to expect to spend at least minimum 2 years in prison when he returns back to his home country. And of course, law enforcement is listening to Kai's story. This is a 17-year-old student who is thousands and thousands miles away from his parents, receiving threatening messages about how his family is going to be hurt and Kai needs to follow their demands. Otherwise, basically, he's going to be put in prison for whatever's going to happen to his parents. What 17-year-old would not be terrified and wanting to protect their family? And that's exactly what happened to Kai. He was terrified. The scammers, or quote-unquote Chinese official law enforcement, their demands were, I would say, mild before Kai going missing. They had requested Kai for money. Kai didn't have money. And so he would frequently reach out to his family in China to wire money, which then Kai would wire to the scammers. And the demands became more aggressive. They claimed that if he doesn't follow their next instructions, they will hurt everyone he knows. And what ended up happening is that the scammers had convinced Kai to purchase several cell phones, similar to the ones that were found in his tent when the police found him. And they had him create accounts through different types of Chinese communications, such as WeChat or other similar platforms, kind of like how in the United States or Europe we use WhatsApp. It was basically the messaging app for China. And through these messaging apps, Kai was able to communicate with his parents behind an unknown identity. And this is where Kai was instructed to send photos of him that would appear to be as if he's kidnapped, as if he's held somewhere out in nature, and basically creating this false scene of being hostage and kidnapped, so that way Kai's family would also wire money to the scammers, in addition to Kai giving money to the scammers as well. And this, of course, on his family side in China, his family was receiving photos of what appeared to be Kai and hostage from an unknown identity asking for money or their son's gonna get hurt. These scammers had successfully obtained 80,000 US dollars from this family. And with Kai's case, law enforcement primarily focused on rescue and recover, but there really wasn't any further notice about who the scammers were or if they were tied to a group. But, however, the FBI, since they were also involved in this case, they started correlating Kai's disappearance to other Chinese exchange students around the world at that time. This led to the FBI posting another advisory about cyber extortion and kidnapping, targeting Chinese exchange students with these exact same behaviors that Kai has experienced. Do you ever find it hard to plan healthy meals or just even have the energy and time to cook? I absolutely dread cooking anymore. I used to really enjoy it. During COVID, where I was at home all the time, I was able to, I would say, experiment with different recipes. But between a full time job, teaching, content creating, and just being a cyber defender, cooking is the last thing on my mind. I love eating food. Who doesn't? But after a while, I get sick of eating granola bars or just eating takeout. My wallet does not enjoy me eating out frequently. And eventually, I found a solution to my problem, and that's through Factor. Factor allows me to meal prep easily through their app and website. In fact, I can customize my meals based on my dietary preferences, like being vegan and gluten free. There are many options for meals designed by real chefs who want you to have the real taste of food. No more am I stressing on going to the store or cooking or planning what to have for dinner. I literally buy these meals, heat them up in 2 minutes, and I have all of my nutrients and protein that I need. In fact, I even store some of my meals in the freezer just to have them last longer and to heat up later. Now, since you all are a listener through Defenders and Lab Coats, you get a special and limited time offer with Factor. With this offer, you get 50% off your first order and 20% off the next few monthly purchases. Depending on your plan, this could be 10 meals for $6 on your first purchase. And you can find the CyberSpeak Labs discount through the Labs LinkedIn tree located in the description below. Remember, this is a limited time offer, so make sure you act on Factor before the time does run out. Now, Cheryl and Kai were one of the few cases where the virtual kidnapping did not resort to physical harm and danger. But that's not always the case where virtual kidnapping becomes into physical kidnapping. This did happen to Chloe Aileen, a 20-year-old British model at this time. Chloe was on her way to have a successful career as a model. She had signed with a modeling agency in 2017, and the agency had scheduled Chloe to have a photo shoot in Paris, which sadly was canceled due to unknown reasons. And this isn't really not uncommon in this industry. Gigs come and go, brands offer or even resign depending on the project. So having consistent gigs, consistent brand building to maintain a positive projection is very, very important in this field. So shortly after the gig was canceled, Chloe had received a message from her agency. They were contacted by a guy named Andre Lazio, who really promised this high-end brand deal for a photo shoot. And through her agency, she signed the contracts and booked the shoot to Milan. Now, Andres had provided her agency with the address of the apartment that the photo shoot was going to take place in addition as to her call time, what to wear, and what to typically expect on her day of travel. There's not really any red flags here in this general communication. All of the stuff seemed legit. The contracts seemed to be aligned with what Chloe has seen previously. It went through her agency. Nothing out of the norm. And on her day of travel, Chloe is so excited. Her bags are packed, feeling like her career is finally taking off. Everything at this point just feels like routine for Chloe. She's excited to go travel. She's excited to land. She's excited for this photo shoot, interacting with friends and family about her travel experiences. And this wasn't a long flight. She was supposed to just fly out there, have a photo shoot, and then go back home the following night. But when she landed in Milan, she arrived at the location that was given to her for her photo shoot. And it was a quiet building in the back of a street. And she went up to the apartment that she was supposed to have the photo shoot in. And instead of being greeted by photographers, stylists, makeup artists, she was greeted with two masked men who had on leather gloves. And taken by shock, one of them had covered her mouth, and they started attacking her and then injected her with a substance. Chloe had no idea what was happening to her, but she was in the beginning stages of becoming kidnapped. Now, time had passed, and in London, Chloe's family and friends started becoming worried. They didn't hear from her. That's not like Chloe. Chloe is one to keep in close contact with her family, especially her mom, because her son is with her mom right now. And her mom is one to always be in touch with Chloe, know exactly what she's doing, knowing exactly where she's going. And when she didn't have an update about Chloe or from her, she started to become concerned. And as time passed, still no update from Chloe. In fact, Chloe was supposed to return to the UK by now. Still no Chloe. And her mom started not feeling right. Something is not right. And she has not heard from her daughter. It has been some time. So her mom called Chloe's agency the next morning because she still hasn't heard from her daughter. And the mom called and she was saying, hey, I haven't heard from Chloe. I don't think she landed last night. I was just wondering if you guys had an update or if you knew if something has happened. You know, this isn't like Chloe to not be disengaged. She's always on top of things. And Chloe's agency thought this was weird. And so while on the phone, they go, okay, let's check our emails, make sure we didn't hear anything from her or the photo shoot. And they did. Except it was something that no mother should ever have to worry about. Chloe's agency received an email demanding for ransom. The email was claimed to be run by association affiliation by the Black Death Group on behalf of a user named MD. The email was demanding for 300,000 euros, or they were planning to auction Chloe on the dark web for trafficking, basically. In reading these demands and assumptions, Chloe is clearly in severe danger. Her agency immediately contacted law enforcement for both the United Kingdom and Italy. Chloe's agency had provided the Italian police the address of the photo shoot that was given, and the Italian police immediately went as fast as they could, and they showed up to the address to discover nothing. Literally nothing. The building was there, but it wasn't designed to be a photo shoot. There was no photo shoot. There was not even indications of a photo shoot going to happen. This was all a setup. Police did discover Chloe's luggage, and investigation at that time became stalled. The police were still trying to figure out how or where the sender sent the email from, if there was any CCTV footage, if there was any witnesses. So they're still collecting and going through their investigation, because how can a girl from the UK just suddenly disappear? So while law enforcement was investigating, things for Chloe weren't looking so good. After her attack and injected with a random substance, Chloe slowly started coming to terms with what was going on. Her head hurt, her body ached, and she just wanted to move the hair away from her face, and she couldn't. She was freaking out. Her hands aren't moving, her legs aren't moving, her head hurts. She can't wiggle. She is so concerned. Everything around her is black. And then she took a deep breath. She had to calm down. And she can feel the ground below her moving. And she realized she couldn't move her legs and her hands because they were tied. They were bound together. And she couldn't move around a whole lot because there wasn't room to move. And she realized she was in the trunk of a car. And it was black because she was in a bag. Feeling her face around the back, she realized there was only a tiny hole, and assuming that it wasn't so she would suffocate in there, but be able to breathe at least. At some point, the car had stopped, the trunk opened, and one of the men was over her. And during this time, she just silently thought about her mom and her son, and she thought that they were going to do something bad and just leave her to decay on the side of a road in some random place in Italy because she had no idea what they wanted with her. The men tied her back up, made sure her wrists were bound tightly. They put gas in the car, they shut the trunk, and they continued the drive. At some point, the car had arrived in an very rural area of Italy. It was very out of the city. It was just vast of fields. Honestly, it was probably beautiful minus the fact of the situation. And the trunk had to open. They pulled Chloe out, and Chloe looked down because she realized she didn't have her shoes anymore, and it was just socks. Chloe also realized they had changed her clothes from what she was wearing supposedly to the photo shoot to just a pink bodysuit. And she couldn't talk. Her mouth was taped, and she tried screaming. It was just muffled. And the men got her out. They made sure she was standing up straight, and they said, "Go up the stairs." Chloe looked up, and all she could think about again was her mom and her son. "Get up the stairs," they said. Chloe went up a set of concrete stairs into the farmhouse that they arrived at. And at the top of the stairs was a small room with wooden floors. Inside was a single bed with a wooden chest of drawers. And that chest, that's where the captors chained her to. Chloe slept on the floor here. She couldn't move. Now, as she was chained to these drawers, the captors had closed the door on her, and she can hear them talk. Hours had passed, and suddenly their voices started to raise. She could hear them saying, "We made a mistake. We made a mistake. We didn't know she was a mother. We didn't know she had a child. We shouldn't be kidnapping mothers." And eventually one of the captors confronted Chloe and asking about if she is a mom, and Chloe goes, yes, I have a son. And she goes, can you let me go? I promise I won't tell anyone. I promise I won't go to the police. Just let me go so I can be with my son. And they said no, because they told her, "We already posted your advertisement. There's a lot of interest." And it took a second for Chloe to realize what they meant. She's being put up for auction. And the captor, before leaving her room, turned around and looked at her and said, "You'll be sold in 5 days," and closed the door. After some time had passed, one of the captors returned to Chloe. The captor said he wanted to help her. And Chloe started to using this as a chance. She wanted to build a relationship with her captor and make her more human to him. And so she would talk to him and ask about his day and stuff like that. And eventually he started becoming more affectionate with Chloe. He would make sure her wrists weren't tied so tight. And in fact, he at some point asked if she wanted to sleep in the bed and not the floor, and of course she said yes. And he just made sure she was well taken care of because he had a friend now. Chloe was ready to go home. Time was ticking, and she wasn't sure what was going to happen to her once she is officially sold. And Sunday came, and the captor walked in, and Chloe begun to shake with fear. And the captor said something that she would have never guessed. He goes, "Taking you was a mistake, but I'm willing to let you go." could your family pay the ransom? And Chloe said, yes, yes, yes. And he said, okay, I'm going to let you go. Within a month, you pay the ransom and you don't speak to anyone about this. Chloe said, yes, I agree, yes. So the captor took her, dropped her in front of a United Kingdom embassy in Italy, and drove away. Chloe calmly walked into the embassy, went to the front desk, and told the lady working, my name is Chloe. I have been kidnapped for 5 days. I would like to go home to see my mom and son. The lady working the front desk knew exactly who she was. Now, when police started doing their investigation, they asked Chloe a little bit more information about the captors, if they had given any description of who they were or what they do. And Chloe said her time, the 5 days she was with her captor, was the most terrifying time of her life. The captor would threaten her and saying that if she was to run away, he would immediately find her and nobody would find her again. And during her time of hostage, the captor would claim that, well, not claim, he bragged basically about how he was part of a group called the Black Death. Chloe said he would take knives out and wave them in front of her and claim that was his favorite way of removing people from Earth was through poison, through his weapons. And he also claimed to be an assassin for this group. Chloe also stated that her captor would frequently brag about how he has worked for this group for 5 years and he has made over 11.5 million euros, allegedly. Of course, Chloe would tell the police that she nodded and acted impressed and just listened to her captor's story because she just wanted to survive and get out. Now, as police continued Chloe's investigation, they went through all the CCTV footage. They eventually found an identity to one of her captors, and her captors ended up being a Polish programmer, and the other captor was found to be his brother. And during the trial, the captor that was claiming to make 11.5 million euros through this group claimed that he was inspired to capture and have a relationship with Chloe based off of the movie called Any Means. And it's very, if you read about this movie, you can see how the two and two are put together. And the captor claims he had fallen in love with Chloe, and he was just really trying to promote her modeling career. He figured staging a kidnap would make her famous and be able to be successful, and he fell in love with her. But regardless of the reason, who cares? You still kidnapped a person, and you absolutely deserve to be put away because that's just crazy. The court sentenced him to 16 years and 9 months in prison. Eventually, they caught his brother because, they told on one another, and the brother denied all of any type of any relations to this case whatsoever. And the court goes, okay, yeah, we're gonna sentence you too. And so his brother also got 16 years and 8 months in prison. However, in 2020, so 2 years after the trial, both brothers had their sentence reduced, and in fact, one of them is expected to be released in 2030, so 5 years from now. How exciting. Of course, the case did bring attention to the Black Death group. There was some investigation on it, and in fact, this is a legit underground dark web group that allegedly is located in Eastern Europe. But unlike other groups, this group, I don't know how to put it without getting in trouble, but I would describe it, they are the internet scammers of the dark web scammers. And this is because they post fake advertisements of women, which they refer to as prey. It's just sick, in my opinion. It's just sick. And they would post advertisements. Some of them were real, some of them were fake, and they would just scam people off of the dark web just to make money. Now, Chloe's case, regardless of what happened to Chloe or the relation, or if her captors really do claim to be part of this group, who knows? But Chloe took this story and went to the public. She wanted to share her story. She wanted people to know about these dangers, to know about these types of people, and she's still very public in the media. In fact, she's working closely with producers to release, if not, it's already released, a 6-part docuseries through BBC where she talks about her experience and essentially replays exactly what happened. Because, again, being kidnapped or having social engineering to the extreme where you are physically being kidnapped is insane. So Chloe is very, very lucky to be where she is now, to be with her son, to be with her mom, and now to being able to tell her story. Cyber kidnapping, her virtual kidnapping, still to this day is a very, 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 very serious topic. And it just brings a whole level of new sophistication with AI and deepfakes. And me personally, being a woman who is very active online and very active through social media and content creating, I will state I have received very uncomfortable, creepy messages. In fact, one I will share with you right now because, you guys are awesome, and I think it's important that you can personally relate to maybe someone that such as me, having a experience like this. And one of the messages I received, and this isn't the first time I received a message like this, but the message said, "Hi, Reanna. We see that you're very active and inspiring. We're hosting an event in Mexico. We would love for you to come speak." And there's a link. Now, most people would probably just click on the link. The website looked legit and everything else. There were a lot of red flags for me. The account was less than a week old. The following was less than 2,000. The company was fake. The website was newly registered within a week. And they were asking me to go to Mexico for an event that did not exist. Of course, I reported that. But again, not everyone has that experience working in cybersecurity or hearing stories from these survivors. So I really, really, really hope this episode can bring some awareness as to how serious this topic is. And again, I do recommend, especially with family or friends and kids, is to have a safe or verbal password or passphrase. That way, if someone is making false claims about someone you are close to, or even pretending to be someone that you know, which is a thing, by the way, it's a very common thing now, these passphrases or passwords can help prove if this is a scam or not. Because only you and your immediate family or close ones know this password or passphrase. And additionally, always verify if someone does claim to be kidnapped and they are demanding ransom. Verify if that person really is even kidnapped. Do not pay these ransoms. Get law enforcement involved. It is very, very scary, but you do not need to be dealing with this alone, especially if someone truly isn't kidnapped and it's just an extortion for money. Again, I recommend working with your law enforcement. I recommend you just looking at those governing laws. And in fact, you can find a lot of education resources about cyber virtual kidnapping through the FBI's website. They have a lot of general awareness and tips that you can bring back to your own family and kids. I highly recommend looking at it. And also, just let me know what you guys think about these stories, or if you have a similar experience. I always enjoy hearing about your guys' personal experience. If you want me to share them on the podcast, I absolutely will. And I just really enjoy reading your guys' comments. It's always cool to see what you guys are up to as well. Additionally, I appreciate you guys joining me again in the lab for this. And if you want to support CyberSpeak Labs in any way whatsoever, please make sure to rate, comment, and share the podcast. This helps me provide you all with research and being able to bring awesome guests to the platform. And of course, it helps grow the lab. You guys are awesome out there. We have doubled in size, and it's only August. Well, I guess it's about to be August. I'm recording this in July, but it's about to be August, and we have doubled our listener platform. That is awesome. So keep up the great work. Again, please make sure to rate and share the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you guys again in the lab soon. Bye.